Removing armpit hair today takes 30 seconds. A cheap razor, done. Ancient humans had none of that. No razor, no cream, no mirror. And yet, across every ancient culture ever studied, on every continent, they were all doing it anyway. The question nobody asks is how, and the answer is stranger than anything you would expect. Before we talk about how ancient humans removed armpit hair, you need to understand why they bothered at all. Because in a world where survival was the only thing that mattered, spending time on personal grooming sounds like the last priority anyone would have. But that assumption is wrong. Armpit hair traps sweat. In a hot environment where ancient humans were physically active for most of the day, trapped sweat means bacteria. And bacteria in warm, moist conditions multiply rapidly and produce a smell that travels. In a world where ancient humans were constantly trying to get close enough to animals to hunt them, a strong human odor was a genuine survival problem. Animals detected human presence through smell long before they could see or hear anyone approaching. Ancient hunters who smelled strongly of sweat were less effective hunters. And less effective hunters meant less food for the group. This is the practical reason armpit hair removal spread across ancient cultures independently. It was not purely vanity. It was connected to something that directly affected survival. But practical reasons alone never explain why a behavior becomes universal across cultures that had no contact with each other. Something else was also driving it, and that something connects directly to the oldest social instinct humans have ever had. Ancient humans used their bodies to communicate constantly, not with words. With appearance, researchers studying ancient grooming practices found a consistent pattern across every culture they examined. Body hair management was never just personal, it was always social. The way you managed your hair, including body hair, told everyone around you something specific about who you were, what group you belonged to, and what your status was within that group. A person who took time to groom themselves was sending a clear signal to the group. They had the time and resources to invest in their appearance. They were not sick or starving. They were healthy enough and stable enough to care about how they looked. In a group of 20 to 50 people where everyone knew everything about everyone else, that signal mattered enormously. And here's the part that most people never consider. Ancient humans were not just communicating within their own group. They were communicating to strangers from other groups at seasonal gatherings where finding a partner was the primary goal. At these gatherings, first impressions were made in seconds, and someone who was visibly well-groomed, clean, and carefully presented stood out immediately from someone who was not. The investment in grooming was an investment in social attractiveness. And social attractiveness in the ancient world had direct consequences for survival through the partnerships and alliances it made possible. So, ancient humans were highly motivated to groom themselves as effectively as they possibly could. The question was always the same. What tools did they actually have to do it with? The first and most obvious tool ancient humans used for hair removal was the same tool they used for almost everything else. Sharp stone, obsidian, the volcanic glass that ancient humans traded across enormous distances specifically because of how sharp it could be made, produces an edge approximately 100 times sharper than a modern steel razor blade. Researchers who have experimented with obsidian shaving describe the experience consistently. Sharper, smoother, less irritating than steel. But using a razor-sharp piece of volcanic glass in an armpit is not the same as using it on a face. The skin in the armpit is thin, sensitive, and folded. The angle changes constantly, and you cannot see what you are doing clearly without a mirror. Ancient humans solved this the same way they solved most difficult physical problems. They helped each other. Archaeologists studying ancient grooming artifacts found that the most delicate grooming tasks in ancient cultures were almost never performed alone. A second person providing assistance made the difference between a clean result and a dangerous one. Someone who could see the area clearly and control the blade angle precisely could remove hair safely in ways that would be nearly impossible alone. This meant grooming was a social activity in ancient communities, not just occasionally, regularly. The older and more experienced members of a group who had developed the most refined technique were the ones others turned to for help with difficult grooming tasks. But sharp stone was not the only method ancient humans used. And the alternatives reveal something about ancient problem solving that is genuinely impressive. Here is where the story takes a turn most people never see coming. Ancient humans discovered very early that hair could be removed without cutting it at all. Through pulling. Tweezing, removing individual hairs by gripping them at the root and pulling them out, is one of the oldest documented hair removal methods in the world. Archaeologists have found tweezers made from shell, bone, and eventually metal at ancient sites going back thousands of years. Shell tweezers found at sites in the Middle East date back over 6,000 years, and researchers believe the practice is significantly older than the surviving artifacts. Tweezing armpit hair is slower than shaving, but it has one significant advantage that ancient humans valued enormously. The hair grows back much more slowly because removing it from the root delays regrowth by weeks rather than days. For an ancient human who had limited time and limited tools, a method that required less frequent repetition was a genuinely practical advantage. But there was another method that appeared independently across cultures on multiple continents that is even more unexpected. Sugaring. Ancient Egyptians were using a paste made from heated sugar, water, and lemon to remove body hair over 3,000 years ago. The paste was applied to the skin, pressed against the hair, and then pulled away quickly, removing the hair from the root in the same way modern waxing works. The technique required no sharp tools and left the skin smooth for weeks. This was not a crude accidental discovery. It required knowing that specific ingredients heated together at specific temperatures produced a substance with specific properties. That knowledge did not appear overnight. It was developed through generations of experimentation and refinement, and it appeared in other ancient cultures independently. Similar sugar and plant-based hair removal pastes turn up in ancient Persian texts, in ancient Indian grooming records, and in the practices of ancient cultures across North Africa. Populations that had no contact with each other all arrived at the same solution to the same problem using the same basic ingredient, which tells you something important. The demand for effective body hair removal was consistent enough across the ancient world that multiple separate civilizations invested significant effort in developing better ways to do it. But none of these methods worked without something else that ancient humans figured out was absolutely essential. And this is the part of the story that connects everything together. Every hair removal method ancient humans ever developed worked significantly better on prepared skin. And ancient humans knew this. Animal fats were the most widely available skin preparation material in any ancient environment. Applied to the skin before using a stone blade, fat reduced friction dramatically and softened the hair shaft, making it easier to cut cleanly. The same principle that modern shaving cream operates on. Applied before tweezing or sugaring, fat softened the skin and reduced the pain and irritation of pulling hair from the root. Plant oils served the same purpose where they were available. Olive oil in Mediterranean cultures, sesame oil in ancient India, coconut oil in Pacific Island communities. Every ancient culture that developed grooming practices also developed specific skin preparation materials drawn from whatever their local environment provided. Researchers studying ancient skincare found that some of these plant-based preparations contained compounds that are now understood to have genuine skin protective properties. Anti-inflammatory compounds, natural antiseptics. Ancient humans did not know the chemistry behind why certain plant preparations worked better than others, but they observed which ones produced better results and passed that knowledge forward. The sophistication of ancient skin preparation for grooming purposes is one of the most consistently underestimated aspects of ancient daily life. These were not people randomly applying whatever was available. These were people applying the specific preparation that their group's accumulated knowledge identified as most effective, refined across many generations of observation and experience. Here is the part of this story that reveals the most about how ancient communities actually functioned. Skill in grooming was a recognized and valued competency in ancient communities. Not in the way that hunting skill or tool making skill was valued, but recognized nonetheless. The person in any ancient group who was most skilled at producing a clean result with minimal pain and minimal risk of injury was the person others turned to when they needed help with difficult grooming tasks. That skill had social value. It created a specific kind of bond between the person providing the service and the person receiving it, a bond built on trust, physical proximity, and repeated positive experience. Researchers studying social grooming in both human and primate communities found that grooming creates measurable neurological effects. It triggers the release of chemicals in the brain associated with relaxation and social bonding. Two people who regularly groom each other develop a specific kind of relationship that is distinct from other social bonds. Ancient humans who groomed each other regularly were building and maintaining social relationships at the same time as managing their physical appearance. The grooming session was never just about removing hair. It was about reinforcing the connection between the people involved. This is why grooming practices appear at the center of social life in every ancient culture ever studied. Not at the edges, at the center. because the social function of grooming was as important as the physical function. So here is the full picture of how ancient humans managed something as simple and specific as armpit hair. They had practical reasons that connected directly to survival. They had social reasons that connected to status and attractiveness. They had stone tools sharper than anything most modern people have ever touched. They had tweezing techniques that removed hair from the root for weeks of smooth skin. They had sugar-based pastes that worked on the same principle as modern waxing, developed independently across multiple continents by people who never communicated with each other. And they had skin preparation methods refined across generations that made every technique more effective and less painful. None of this was primitive. None of it was a crude approximation of what we do today. Some of it was genuinely more sophisticated in specific ways than the modern equivalents. The next time you lift a razor and complete the process in 30 seconds without a second thought, remember that somewhere in the ancient world, someone spent real time, real skill, and real social coordination achieving the same result with obsidian, shells, and heated sugar paste. They got there. It just took considerably more effort, and considerably more help from the people around them. If this changed how you see something you do without thinking every single week, subscribe. And drop a comment telling me which ancient method you would actually be willing to try. Because honestly, the obsidian option is more tempting than it sounds.